Good morning, everyone. We're just here to let you know that we've charged a local teen in relation to a sexting incident. In late May 2013, a CPS school resource officer was contacted by the principal of a Northeast school and advised one of their female students was being harassed via a bunch of text messages. The texts, all of a sexual nature, included threatening comments and came from an unknown cell phone number. The victim also received more than 25 calls from the same number. She did not respond to any of the messages or calls, and the next day advised an adult at the school. During the investigation, it was learned the victim received dozens of similar messages and the same number in February 2013, but did not tell anyone. Investigators, with the assistance of the CPS cyber support team and the Internet Child Exploitation ICE team, identified it to a local iPod user account. The account belonged to the parent of a 15-year-old boy who attended the same school as the victim. The pair had previously been in a relationship. The boy was arrested on Friday and charged with criminal harassment and making child pornography. He cannot be identified under the provisions of the Youth Criminal Justice Act. This case is one of more than a dozen sexting-related incidents that have been reported to the CPS this year. There are likely many more that go unreported to police and are dealt with in other ways. The CPS works closely with the city's local school boards to educate youth on the perils of sexting. The impacts of this activity are devastating, and the effects can be long-lasting. Even if images, videos, and explicit messages are deleted, there's no telling where they may end up on the internet. You need to be aware that every online interaction leaves an electronic footprint, and it can be tracked by either the sender or the receiver. Anyone involved in sexting incidents is encouraged to call the non-emergency police line at 403-266-1234 to report it, or report it anonymously through the cybertip.ca line. I'm just going to turn it over to Staff Sergeant John Guichon now, related to cybercrimes team. Thanks.
Good morning. Just going to talk really briefly about the investigation. As you probably know, these types of investigations involve a significant amount of support. When it involves electronic media or electronic devices, there's a lot of technical requirements. So initially, the investigating officer, who was an SRO, got our cyber crimes team involved. They did an initial analysis, and then when they found that what they thought might be child pornography, they came, talked to us, and asked us for assistance. So we got involved, did a further analysis, were able to identify the offender, and ultimately we notified the SRO of our findings. We assisted the SRO in the actual arrest, interview, and processing. So ultimately this youth was charged with making child pornography and harassment. So I understand there's some questions or concerns as what constitutes child pornography. It's quite broad in Canada. It can be any visual depiction, any audio depiction, or any written depiction of sexual activity between any person under the age of 18. So it's fairly broad.
So in this case it would be written?
Specifically, yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. Is it what kind of this child pornography charge, is it because of a picture he took of himself or her or something? Or is it just mostly the written?
Without getting into details, it's primarily a written depiction of child pornographic acts.
And it makes it child pornography because he was describing somebody who was underage?
Exactly.
Is it because he was underage or the person?
It's the act that he was describing.
Sorry, maybe I'll ask you that in a form that you can kind of give us a useful input.
Certainly.
Maybe can you explain what he was allegedly doing and what made it child pornography?
Without getting into specifics of the case, any basically written material that describes a sexual act between or involving a person under the age of 18 is considered child pornography under the criminal code. Without getting into details, the primary issue here was a written depiction of child pornography.
Can you describe how difficult it is to trace back to source? Is it a
There,
time-consuming process, or is it fairly simple?
there is a belief out there, probably by society, that there's a veil of anonymity on the internet, and that just is not the case. Everything you do on the internet leaves a footprint, and my unit in particular is quite skilled at figuring out who did what and where and when. So there are some limitations as to what we can do. Oftentimes we need judicial authorization to do that kind of thing, but no, it's not impossible. Sometimes it's slow, but it's not impossible. In this situation, we were able to do it within 2 weeks, I believe.
Is it more rare to charge a young person with these kind of charges?
It's all contextually based. It really depends on the case. It's a case-by-case sort of thing, but no, it's not particularly unusual.
How was the victim doing?
Well, she's a very smart young woman. She had the presence of mind to involve an adult as soon as she realized that this stuff was going beyond what was normal. So, you know, I can't comment as to her state of mind currently, but she's, you know, smart enough to do the right thing right away.
And they're both 15, or
14 and 15, primarily basically the same age, yes.
she's 14, he's 15?
Yes.
I know you can't probably tell us this, but maybe again with this written material you're talking about, was
Mhm.
it descriptions of acts between the two of them, or was it just?
It's,
I don't know.
yeah, I'd prefer not to get into the specifics of the actual investigation, but I perhaps can say that it involved and maybe another member of an immediate family.
See, that leaves us with more questions.
Certainly. And I'm afraid I can't get into specifics because it forms the basis of the charge.
Is it unusual to be charging somebody with written material? I've seen various child pornography charges over the years,
Mhm.
but I don't remember ever a written one in Calgary.
The vast majority of the charges that my unit personally does is video and audio. Video, audio, and photographs. But it's not unusual. It's, I think we distributed a copy of the criminal code that lists the actual definition of child pornography. And it's fairly specific. There's 2 sections that indicate written material can be child pornography.
And sorry, like when we just did a thing on awareness for sexting,
Mhm.
and I think people thought that it was innocent enough to send pictures back and forth. Obviously, we can get out of hand. That's why they did the warning. But the fact that child pornography charges could be laid, maybe you want to reiterate that.
Well, certainly, a lot of people don't understand whether what they're doing is child pornography. I mean, there's a level of consent, I guess. It's when that kind of interaction is wanted, you know, it may not cross the threshold into the criminal realm, but as soon as it becomes unwanted, then there's an aspect of criminality. And we're talking about similar age peers. If it ever involves an adult and a youth, the issue of wanted or unwanted is not the case. It's strictly child pornography. By the clear letter of the law, we could certainly charge children who are exchanging photographs with one another. But that's not the intent. There's no intent for them to be committing a criminal code offense.
So the police say that there's been over a dozen incidents of sexting reported. So is ICE brought into the plea then?
The vast majority, no. Because it usually involves an aspect of bullying, usually criminal harassment, extortion, blackmail, that sort of thing. So no, it's relatively rare for us to get involved.
And the device that was used was an iPod?
Yes.
So how does that work? Is there some sort of messaging service?
There are different applications available on iPods that allow people to send texts from an iPod to a phone.
And it was the parents?
Well, the parents, shall we say, account.
And they had no idea this was happening?
No.
Is that concerning to you guys?
Well, certainly. I'm not going to stand here and say how to parent a child, but perhaps being more involved in what their activities are, what their access to computers is, may be a wise thing, given the jeopardy that their child may be facing.
So in this case, like I know you talked about if you delete it, there's still a footprint. So had messages been on an ongoing basis deleted?
No.
So the parent could have at any time gone on their iPod and looked and seen all of these messages?
Yeah.
So there was no measures taken to kind of hide what they were doing?
Well, that's the thing. No, a lot of children don't understand what they're actually doing is unlawful. You know, this is it seems to be becoming a norm for their behavior, and I really don't think they grasp the consequences of their actions, or the potential consequences.
But if these parents would have been more active,
Yeah, we may not be standing here.
It seems maybe this is editorializing, it's a harsh charge, child pornography when you're 14 or 15.
Certainly.
Especially as we're saying the kid may have been fairly unaware that what he was doing was wrong. Is this gonna send a message to others like him, do you hope?
I certainly hope so. Yeah.
What kind of punishment can you get for this?
Well, as an adult, it can range anywhere for there are mandatory minimum sentences for child pornography charges as an adult, between 14 days to a year, depending on the charge. They don't apply, of course, to youth.
but in this kind of a case, how important is it for early intervention? Like, if a kid is doing this now, what would they be doing as an adult, you know?
Conjecture, yeah, that would require conjecture, but you know, that's true. Yeah, you normalize that kind of behavior, and then it becomes just the way they do things. And as an adult, it could be significantly more repercussions.
What happened in February? She's receiving calls from that same number, didn't recognize.
She ignored them. She simply ignored them at that point. Didn't tell anyone at that point, and they stopped. And she hoped that they wouldn't continue. And unfortunately, they continued, and she'd had enough and told an adult about it.
So they took a bit of a break from March, April?
Apparently, yes. Yeah.
And sorry, there were phone calls that she received?
No, it was all text. Yeah.
And how long were they in a relationship for?
I really don't know.
Is she still attending the school?
As far as I know.
Is there any follow-up from CPS or anybody else? I mean, a student who's kind of the center of this, we don't have the name, obviously the kids in the school are gonna know exactly who we're talking about here. Is there any follow-up, any protection for her now going back? She's had one of her fellow students who may or may not be popular, charged with a pretty heinous crime. What
Certainly.
happens to her now?
I'll defer that question to Inspector Bosley,
Yeah, I
please.
think it's a good time. Everybody's good with the questions there. I think it's important to just really emphasize that we take these situations very seriously. Like we said earlier, we were here just a week ago talking about the education component of this, and here we are now talking about a situation that we ended up, resulting in charges as a result of an investigation. So there's always supports for the victims or the complainants in this kind of situations. We have a variety of different options within the police service, like our victim assistance support team. Those kind of options are available to victims, and we get engaged with them to ensure that they have the supports they need in those situations.
Are you aware of how long they were in a relationship for?
I'm not. So.
So is there any cyberbullying or anything? And maybe this will lead into bullying for the victim, right?
Sorry,
Is there any, was there any cyberbullying at all going on, or is it just plain sexting?
well, I'd speak to John
Yeah, I
about that
think
one.
the harassment aspect of it speaks to the cyberbullying. The cyberbullying really is criminal harassment. That's exactly what it is. So yeah, so any unwanted contact would constitute criminal harassment, and really it's just a form of bullying, cyber or face to face.
Can you describe, like, say he had these conversations in person as opposed to using technology and texting him, what would the difference be?
The charge would be the same. It would be criminal harassment. It might be one other portion of that section of the criminal code, but it's still criminal harassment.
But the child pornography thing wouldn't exist if it would have been verbal?
No, verbal would still constitute an offense, yes.
Is that more difficult to prove?
Certainly, yes. Here we have a written record. We have an electronic record of it.
And people seem to think that it's easier, more comfortable to text these things.
Well, it's that whole issue of anonymity. They believe it exists out there, but it really does not.
And I just want to say one other thing for the, any of the complainants out there, people that want to bring this information forward. It's important to recognize that there are a lot of supports out there for people, for teens or anybody that has these kind of situations happening with them. We talked about it last week about needhelpnow.ca, which is a website that teens and moms and parents can go to just to get information about what kind of supports are available to them. So thanks very much.